Basically self-explanatory. Let's go. The 5 principal forms of power that are currently being used. Okay? Force, coercion, persuasion, authority, and manipulation. So the 4 that are not authority are the ones that are currently being used in the field, and I think those refer mainly to what I would argue majority of leaders are, African leaders are applying currently. So force is basically just to threaten to use force. Coercion is threatening the use of force, and force is basically when you say that you're going to use violence or take away valuable resources in order to achieve your own goals. And authority is one that I find very pertinent. Authority is one that I find very pertinent because I think this is where we should be heading as a continent and in the world in general. So authority is basically, it's just, it's lawful use of power. It's legitimate, and therefore it implies that it's accepted and acknowledged by the society in which it is found, right? So, who obtains power? Okay, I love this picture. So who obtains power, right? I sat and I asked myself, why is it that my mother is a lecturer and Kibaki is the president of Kenya? Why do some people obtain power in preference to others? And my assumption going into this research was that it has to be those who are the most ruthless. They have to be brutal and aggressive, and you have to take cutthroat measures. And you know, you probably think the same, and we'd both be wrong, right? Because actually, I found that there are different factors that influence who gets into power, but the one that I found most important is the ability to forge social connections. The more charismatic you are, the more you're able to form social bonds, the more likely you are to get into a position of power. And this fabulous study was done in UC Berkeley, and they found that the most powerful students were actually the most kind. They were helpful, they were considered generally very nice people, right? And key factor is extroversion. What this means is basically you're more likely to go out, you know the basic meaning of extroversion. You enjoy making connections and meeting with people, which is basically what we do here, networking. No neuroticism in males. This is a key factor. I don't know if it's the opposite in females. Neuroticism basically just refers to basically a tendency to get mental disorders, if you want to call them that, or conditions. So, status in social groups and social outcomes, which is basically the same. And of course, I like to put this in context. It also depends on the society you're found in. So perhaps ethnicity could play a part if you're a majority of a black community, so maybe it would be difficult for someone of a different race to come into power. The impact on the powerful. What exactly happens when these people get into positions of power? Why do they happen to suddenly change, right? What? There's increased goal-directed behavior and cognition. So they did a study, and they studied very different people in different positions of authority, from the military to other organizations. And they found that the powerful are more likely to use the goals of the organization to achieve their own personal goals. So everything they do is to achieve a certain goal. That means they're less influenced by circumstantial influences. So the environment and other social phenomena influence them less than everybody else. Low theory of mind. So this is a concept in psychology, and everyone in psychology this year will probably tell you what this means. It's basically, in simple terms, low empathy quotient. So you're unable to take in the perspectives of others. Which I find absolutely fascinating. Next. The powerful ignore new opinions, and they anchor heavily on their own vantage points. So this lady from Stanford Business School, she's a psychologist. I don't know how that works. Her name is Deborah Grunfeld. What she did was she studied 1,000 decisions handed down by the Supreme Court justices in the United States of America, and she found that the longer they stayed in power, the less nuanced and less complex their written decisions were. What this suggests is, as they stay longer there, of course, they're rising in ranks, they're increasing in power, they take in fewer opinions and only center on their own narrow-minded view. Very scary fact. Next. The behavior is more consistent with idiosyncratic tendencies. Mouthful. Okay, so they studied a few people in low power and high power conditions, and they found that the people in high power conditions express more intra-group variability. So what I concluded from this is that these people are less influenced by societal norms. So the society plays a lesser influence on them, right? So they use their own intracyclic processes to come up with even more creative thoughts and experiences than us normal people do. Illusion of personal control. This is key. This is one of the key impacts, and is given as a reason behind all the impacts of power on the powerful. What this means is that once you get into power, there's an increased optimism and self-esteem. You begin to think you can make the impossible happen, even if it's not in your control. right? So I'm just going to do something simple. Hi, sir. This is my coin, right? Heads or tails? Tails. Do you want to flip it, or should I do it for you? Okay. Linda, should I flip it for you? Or do you want to do it? Okay. Where'd you get it? Okay. So, why did Linda choose to flip the coin and he would rather I did it myself? It's a simple experiment that they carried out. They found that people in high power conditions thought they'd control outcomes that were even beyond their control. Whether or not it was heads or tails, it was up to chance, 50-50 chance. You know, there are two options, statistics, basics. Why did Linda want to do it herself? And why did he didn't want to do it? It shows that they think that they control everything, and this ties them back to all this control. And this is into my next point, which is the power paradox. And basically, this explains how people in power end up losing the power. It's absolutely fascinating, because the same qualities that got them there and happen to assist them while they're in power, which is the illusion of personal control and these positive illusions, means that they make poor choices because there's over-optimism, right? And end up losing their power. Very sad. So, important question. Can we meet to get these effects? Is there any way we can avert these negative effects of power? Maybe. Sort of. Kind of. Maybe. Let's see. So the first one is that you induce feelings of injustice. What this basically means is that you make them feel like they don't deserve the power. So for example, Mr. Scudder, I really don't think that you should be teaching biology in the African Leadership Academy. Now that simple statement, maybe if replicated several times, would have the effect of creating in him a feeling of injustice, that he doesn't deserve his position. So it reverses the automatic effects of power. But I personally don't like this solution for two reasons. First of all, if Mr. Scudder knows, after this presentation, he should know, then will it work as well? Right? Probably not. And the second reason is that it induces ego threat. What this basically means is that Mr. Scudder feels that I'm threatening his authority, his position, so he lashes out. He becomes defensive and more aggressive. Pointless. Next one is coupling power and status. And this one I find more viable because it's in line with what I think should be in store for Africa, which is moving on to authority, one of the 5 forms of power. What this means is that when power is unbridled, that's when you have the negative effects. When you couple it with status, perhaps you can counter these negative effects. But I don't know how practical this is, and very few studies have been done on this, so let's wait and see. So, my second hypothesis was that power is not all corrupting. So what I argue is that power itself is an evolutionary advantage that has developed over time. And what this assumption would mean is that I'm arguing that power itself is organic. That means it's constantly mutating, right? And I feel that as it mutates, so do we, and how we adapt to it. So, we said power is a capacity to influence others. What if power itself is a way to protect you from the influence of power? So, top 6 reasons to become powerful in the year 2013. So, 1, they have increased awareness to internal processes. Intrapsychic processes rule for the powerful. You don't take in salient examples, you basically generate your own ideas. Second one, they automatically think in a way that makes complex decision-making easier. When they did a study, they found that the powerful thinking is the same as the unconscious processing of a normal person. It's faster, it's more abstract, and therefore it means it's better for complex reasoning, right? And then it incorporates available threatening information less than everybody else, right? So for example, they did a study on the powerful and the powerless in an investment firm, and they found that the powerful were less likely to think that everyone else was out to get them. The people in the low power condition were more paranoid. Right? So, they're able to stay focused on your goals, and this ties them back to another effect I talked about, low theory of mind. So if you don't take in external influences, it follows that you're more focused on your own goal. And this maybe explains Deborah's research where they took in fewer perspectives. The next one, they have increased confidence in their own thoughts and behaviors. This ties back to positive illusions. So you see how it's a double-edged sword. And finally, There's increased propensity for negotiation. And this was, I found, a bit ironical, but when you think about it, on the surface it might not make sense, but when you think about it, there's increased goal-directed activity. So as long as it helps them get what they want, they're willing to negotiate. So, is power inherently all corrupting? The grand question. So what I did was I compiled what I thought were the main characteristics and my deductions. And hopefully we will agree at the end. Let's go. So, power is an interactive process, right? It can be balanced or imbalanced. It's a purposeful activity, right? It's potential or active. So what can I deduce from this, right? It's produced by social interaction. So it's mutually modulating. What that means is that even if I'm a ruthless leader, I need someone to be ruthless too. Do you see what that means? Great. So all power relationships are interactive, the same thing basically, and they're dependent on situational cues. So from this I would argue power itself is an innocuous condition. What happens is that I would argue power is like a magnifier, a magnifying lens. So what happens like personality, it happens to magnify facets of your personality that are already inherent within you. So they did a study and they found that when certain men were on the different aggressive scale, and they found that the more aggressive you are, when you're given power, you're put in a high power condition, you're more likely to lash out. And these people began to view women in sexual terms, and they even had an increased proclivity towards rape. So you see, what happens is that it just merely magnifies a quality that's already within you. So power itself is innocuous. So your own personality, as well as the environment you find yourself in, depend on what happens afterwards. So I think I proved my point. Yes, 2 hypotheses proved. So where should we go from here? I have concluded that power itself is applicable in so many fields of society. Sociology, why do some civilizations stand while others crumble? Discrimination, crime, rape itself is said is merely a power play, and of course, leadership. So, I said in the beginning that I hope Africa will be moving towards authority, which is a stable structure due to power, and it's just and legitimate. I think in national view, it implies the use of a constitution. So, one of the ways you said to mitigate power is coupling power and status. So I would argue that the next step for us would probably be incorporating stable structures in which power can blossom and evolve in a particular set way. Otherwise, we'd have an implosion. So why do the powerful act the way they do? I'll give you a simple example with Mr. Scudder again. He's a bio teacher. He controls the knowledge. That means he has control over the available resources, right? We can award rewards or punishments. So he can say, guys, extra homework or whatever it is, punishment he chooses to give. Or he can reward you. You can have a cookie, whatever it is he wants to give you. And then that means he acts more and with greater variability. Do you understand? Because he is in a position of power. Therefore, the part that worries me about this is the variability part. It's difficult to predict how a powerful person will act. So once you put in structures in which they can follow a certain path, I think it will be easier for us to mitigate the effects. And I think this is something we all need to think about as we move in, graduate, and move out in different spheres of life. Great. Questions?